In 2024, two narrative-focused, mature indie games released. One of these games was Mouthwashing, a game that's popularity took off like wildfire, and it makes sense why. It's an indie horror game that's shown out that can be beaten in a couple of hours, and it has little to no actual gameplay. While yes, it is a game that deals with some very dark topics, it presents these themes in a way that's still palatable for most people. And you know content creators, they fucking love indie horror games. The other game was 1000xResist, a game that didn't quite take off as much. Now, don't get me wrong, it didn't go completely under the radar. It got the patented Jacob Geller shoutout, but still, it did not receive a lot of attention, which, in my opinion, is a massive shame because this game is a goddamn masterpiece. 1000xResist is not just the best game of 2024, it might even be the best game of this decade. It is a genuinely staggering work of brilliance. Like, seriously, this is the kind of game that after playing it will make you disappointed that other games aren't as good as this. The last time I was this enraptured by a game's narrative was 2019's Disco Elysium, which, if you know me, comparing anything to Disco Elysium is extremely high praise. This video is made with the assumption that the person watching this has never even heard of this game. So because of that, I will try and be very light on spoilers. That being said, 1000xResist is almost entirely a narrative experience. So to talk about this game requires me to talk about the narrative. However, I personally think that there's a massive difference between playing a game and watching some bozo talk about it. So even if you feel like I spoiled too much of this game, please still give it a try. 1000xResist opens on kind of a strange note. We see a woman wearing an outfit that's strangely familiar, seeming to be in an act of praying. The text box by her name tells us that her name is Iris. The camera then pans to the other side of the massive room where another woman, in an equally ridiculous outfit, looks on in anger. Her text box shows her name as Watcher. We then get the first of many dialogue choices in the game, and what? Red to blue? 6 to 1? Hair to hair? What do any of these phrases mean? To the player at this moment, they're nonsense. It's one thing to have a character say a weird in-universe phrase, it's another thing to make the player say it. Regardless of what you pick, Watcher runs forward and stabs Iris in the back. Watcher then says something about stealing immunity and choosing who lives or dies. More things that you have absolutely no context for. Suddenly, a new character appears behind Watcher who also looks really familiar to her. And before we can even understand what's happening, the best part? We then get the name of the first chapter. Is it called Chapter 1? Prologue? Nope. It's Chapter Redacted. This is a pretty wild introduction. It throws us into a very chaotic scene with nothing to latch onto, and that's not even including what happens in Chapter Redacted. Which introduces us to even more characters and phrases like occupants, the surface, no feelings worth getting incinerated over, and why is there a character named Bang Bang Fire? For a new player, it's all very overwhelming. I can imagine for some people even to a point of frustration. I'm going to cut through this a bit and give you a basic rundown of what's happening here. Now, for people who've never played the game, everything I'm going to say here is going to sound like pretty big spoilers. They're really not, it's stuff you piece together within the first couple hours of the game. So, here we go. In the year 2047, an alien race comes to Earth named the Occupants. This species brought with them an extremely contagious and deadly disease. This disease causes people infected to expel all the water in their body through their eyes, meaning it caused people to literally cry to death. Because of all of this, humanity quickly started to fall apart. However, there was one hope, a young Canadian girl named Iris, who was discovered to be immune to the disease. The government then took her in and cloned her, hoping that they could find a way to use her to fight the disease. An unknown amount of time after this, all of humanity has died, except for Iris and her clones, who live in a paradise called the Orchard. Iris, now known as the All-Mother, has set up a system where all the clones strive to get picked to fill an important role. These roles are Watcher, Healer, Knower, Bang Bang Fire, Fixer, and Principal. The character you play as in the game is the current Watcher. You got all that? Good. 1000xResist is essentially the story of both Watcher and Iris. It's the story of Iris growing up as a Hong Kong immigrant in Canada, a teen with a troubled home life who is suddenly thrusted into a great position of power. It's also the story of Watcher, a sister who is incredibly devoted to the All-Mother and her teachings, but after a tragedy starts questioning her faith, and finding out that everything she knew is not quite what it seems. The primary way the game tells this story is through an in-universe system called communions, where essentially sisters are able to link with Iris/Allmother and experience one of her memories. Now that we're here, let's talk about the game's mechanics. Like I have stressed multiple times in this video already, 1000xResist is a narrative-focused game. It's not the kind of game where you're going to be engaging in combat systems or shooting guns. You will at points be solving some puzzles, but like, if you're unable to solve these puzzles, you probably shouldn't be playing video games. Of the small amount of gameplay mechanics that are present, they are fairly interesting. To start, let's talk about how this game's dialogue wheel works. So, in most games, when you get options to choose dialogue, you know, get to say the line of dialogue you picked. Well, in 1000xResist, you also get to do that. Sometimes. The dialogue wheel in this game will present you with choices that either the player doesn't have enough context for to pick a decision they understand, options that don't actually affect what watcher says, and sometimes choices the player does have enough context for and does affect what watcher says. Notably, this usually only occurs during conversations that have no relevance to the overall plot. I think the perfect encapsulation of this is this guy right here. You can talk to him near the beginning of the game, where you can ask him questions about where am I and what year is it, and he'll basically refuse to answer any of your questions and just kinda makes fun of you. For some people, this aspect of the game might be frustrating, that characters in this world are generally condescending to you and refuse to give you answers about basically anything. But for me, I really love it. For one, very little of this game's story is spoon-fed to you. It actually feels like an accomplishment when you figure out the answers to basically any question about the world. It's not that confusing of a story, but it is just enough that when you do figure out something, it feels really satisfying. The other reason I like this is because these characters aren't being obtuse for no reason. They have a reason to be like this. But what is that reason? Well, to figure it out, you'd have to actually play the game. So why don't you, go do that? Another mechanic in this game are these platforming sections where you teleport to these different points inside more abstract type environments. These sections are fine. The game removes pretty much all challenges these could have by making it so that whenever you activate the lock-on, it stops time completely. These sections add a flavor to the game and make it so the entire thing isn't just walking from point to point. I guess you do need gameplay in games, sadly. I guess my only real criticism is that sometimes it feels inconsistent whether or not a point is close enough to lock on. But to call this a criticism is like pointing out an item being misplaced between shots in a movie. It's something that maybe will bother you in the immediate moment, but does not matter at all to the overall experience. The last mechanic, and probably the most important one, is what I'm going to call time jumping. You probably noticed at the bottom of the screen this display. What it's showing is the current date you're in with a name that relates to whatever events happened at that moment. This number represents the moment in time you're in, and when you move up or down a number, you move further or backwards in time, allowing you to be in the same spot at different points in time. In the first chapter of the game, this mechanic is used to get through pathways that are blocked at one point in time, but not another. Other times, the game uses it to simply present different events that happen in the same place, just a couple of years separated. It is a pretty cool mechanic. It allows the game to present things out of chronological order in an in-universe justified way. Now, you could definitely argue that this game should have done more with this mechanic, built it around more complex puzzles and forced the players to use it in increasingly more creative ways. And for most games, I would probably agree, but I can't for 1000xResist. The game would not frankly be better by pushing its focus away from the story. It feels weird to say this about a video game, but I just don't believe they could have crafted gameplay sections as compelling as the main story. And man, the way they use this mechanic with the story is just so incredible. I'll talk about that later in the video. By now, you've been watching quite a bit of footage of this game, and you're probably aware now that this game has a fairly strange presentation. A lot of this game is just talking to NPCs, or they're doing some idle animation or standing completely still. Of course, there's also no facial animation whatsoever, making this the Dark Souls of indie games. It's a style that definitely looks weird. If you're being uncharitable to the game, you might even call it jank. I, for one, really like it. It gives the game a personality that's unique and kind of unlike any other game. There's also a reason why these characters are standing completely still. What you're seeing is a snapshot of a memory. What this character was doing at this exact moment in this exact time. It makes sense to represent this with stationary movement. There's actually a really cool moment about halfway through the game that intentionally uses janky, glitchy movement to represent something. It's a really cool moment. That also shows to me that a lot of the ways the NPCs move and are animated is very particular and intentional. Other than the NPCs, there's the general visual design of this game, and oh my fucking god, is it gorgeous. There's a combination of factors of why this game looks so good. The first is the environment design. This game has a wide variety of environments ranging from the Orchard, a futuristic utopian type setting, abstract surreal dreamscapes of the Communions, modern city streets, and even post-apocalyptic visuals. The other factor is that the lighting, textures, and art style of this game in general is just very pretty. But I think the most important aspect of this game's visuals is the cinematography. Now, cinematography, for those who don't know, is a term that's used to generally describe the looks of films and TV. It's a term that encompasses lots of stuff, like lighting, camera movement, what lens you're using, and probably some other stuff I don't know. It's not gonna go into school for this. Here's a question that I think is interesting. Do games have good cinematography? Now, this is not a question of do games look good? Of course games look good. This is a question of do games fit into the style of how we film TV and movies? For the most part, I would say no. Most games that come out are not necessarily trying to look like movies and TV. They're trying to have their own visual identity. And then you have games that very much want to be cinematic, something like the new God of War games having an unbreaking camera, or the Metal Gear games directed by Hideo Kojima, a man in the running with Neil Druckmann and David Cage in the category of game devs who really want to direct movies instead. Even these games don't really have impressive or memorable bits of cinematography. So what I'm saying is that it's just rare for me to think that games have good cinematography. With that being said, 1000xResist has some really good cinematography. The first moment I realized it was during Chapter Redacted when we got this shot. The way it uses blurriness is not something you really see in games, only like art house films. And there's plenty of shots like this in the game, shots that show the people who made this know how to present shots in a way that's both stylish and visually compelling. I keep returning to this one especially, of a city sunk into the sea. It's epic, and the weight of it really hits you even if you don't have story context for it. Like really, what can I even say about this shot? Just look at it. Visuals, however, are only one aspect of presentation. The other part is sound, and especially music. The music in 1000xResist is very atmospheric, most of it comprised of synths and pianos. The music in this game is good and works very well in the context of the game, but it's not the standout, you know? Like, I would never listen to any of these songs outside of the game, but if the game didn't have this music, it would be much worse off. When you first play this game, one of the most surprising aspects will be that the game is fully voice acted. And not just that the voice acting is really good. The voice actors in this game bring a lot of life to lines that may not be as memorable without them. There's a lot of side characters that have really unique voices. Like this teacher character at the start of the game. He only has like 4 lines, but I still remember him because of his voice.
The All-Mother.
The All-Mother, is she some kind of internet star?
She is a god.
Oh jeez, when the kids get so zealous.
I really love the choice to give Secretary, your AI companion throughout the game, the voice of a child. It's both a really unique choice that also has a really cool payoff by the end of the game.
A recording device to record moving pictures and sound to make movies.
Movies?
Grand, fictitious narratives that would be projected on large screens. A ritual of gathering.
But voice acting can only be as good as the words the actors are saying, so let's talk about the writing. When it comes to video game writing, something that I've always felt games struggle with is having compelling dialogue. Plenty of games will have great overall stories, characters, and concepts they're playing with, but stumble with writing moment-to-moment dialogue. Even some absolute classics I love struggle with this. Comparatively, 1000xResist has great dialogue. Each character is given a lot of personality in just the word choices and phrases they use.
Finally get to see how this train works. It's been driving me nuts this whole time. How does it switch? What makes it turn the right way? It seems simple from far away, but the closer you get, it keeps going and going.
You like that kind of problem, don't you?
Seems like it.
Also, this game does something I really like a lot, which is creating slang for in-universe terms. Example of this are the shortening of the name Bang Bang Fire to just BB or BBF. Another example of this is that characters will say Hecky Grace and shorten it to just Hecky G, or shorten Hecky Allmother to just be Hecky Almo. So, we've reached a point in this video where I've ran out of things to say about the game without spoiling it. So, from here to the time steps shown on screen, I'm gonna spoil some very major plot beats of this game. Okay, now I want to talk about what I consider to be the single best moment in the entire game. But we're gonna need some context. The 2019 to 2020 Hong Kong protests was a mass revolt in response to the encroaching power of mainland China. The protest plays a major part in this game's story. Iris's parents were protesters who fled Hong Kong. Making a game about the Hong Kong protests is very different than making a game about, say, World War II, or Vietnam, or hell, even the invasion of Iraq. The Hong Kong protests were so recent that almost everybody who would play this game remembers them. At least, I remember, and if I ask my friends about it, I think they would remember as well. I can picture myself going to school those days, reading updates about what was happening on my phone, seeing videos of protesters clashing with police, and discussions about people who had been disappeared. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, it was the first global event I have very strong memories of living through. That time period is very seared into my mind. A little more than halfway through the game, Watcher, for plot reasons I'm skipping over, decides to kill Iris. After doing exactly that, we suddenly cut to 10 years later, where we play as an all-new character, a different clone than Watcher, named Blue. We find out that after Watcher kills Iris, that Principal took over the orchard and turned it into an authoritarian police state. And the game makes absolutely sure that you understand that this is a standard for China. There is no subtlety whatsoever when it comes to this. There is no subtlety whatsoever when it comes to what the Red Guard is and Principal are supposed to represent. So, more plot things happened, and Blue assassinates Principal with an explosive. We now get to the moment. Blue miraculously survives the explosion that was supposed to kill her and Principal. She then makes her way to try and escape the Red Guard. As she is running, suddenly she jumps back in time to the Hong Kong protests, running with the protesters away from the police, tear gas filling the streets. Then suddenly you're back in the orchard, running from the Red Guard, but this time the tear gas is here as well. And it's not just the tear gas, the protesters are with you as well. You see them guiding your way forward. And then you get to this room. Hundreds of black umbrellas, a symbol of the protests, scatter the floor. In the center, a lone police officer covered in blood, and God, this whole scene is elevated so much by the music.
Whose line is? Hold.
Forget her. We're almost there.
All of this builds into being one of the most emotionally impactful scenes I have ever played in a video game. A little while after this in the game, there's a scene that kind of serves as an epilogue to the protest scene. It's a conversation between Iris's parents, talking about being protesters, and I'm just gonna let the scene play out. I don't think there are things I could say that would do it justice, so just watch and listen.
What was the point? Fighting for freedom? The 5 demands? It was a mistake.
You know that's not true.
All it did was expedite the end. Brought their fists down harder, faster.
Come on, Clara.
We lost, didn't we?
It wasn't just about winning.
What? What was it about then?
You remember? In the streets? Hundreds of thousands marching shoulder to shoulder. Biggest demonstrations in HK history. The world watched it all happen. Heard our voices. Saw us bleed.
So?
So? If we stayed silent, didn't stand up for ourselves, they would say, this is how it always was. They would say, this is what the people wanted. But no, they can't say that, because it has gone down in history that we resisted fiercely, that we fought for a different future until we couldn't. That legacy lives in us.
If you are someone who cares at all about games as an art form and want to see the medium push forward, play 1000xResist. Right now, this game is an obscure gem that not enough people know about, but in the future, this could be a modern classic.